The Democratic Republic of Congo is grappling with a complex and concerning issue: the rise of violent gangs known as Kulunas. These groups, often composed of disenfranchised youth, have terrorized the streets of Kinshasa and other urban centers, contributing to a climate of fear and instability. In recent months, the Congolese government has launched a series of aggressive crackdowns aimed at dismantling these gangs and restoring order to the streets. The most controversial aspect of this campaign has been the government's decision to reinstate the death penalty, after a 2-decade moratorium. This decision has led to the mass execution of convicted Kulunas, with over 100 individuals put to death in the notorious Njenga prison. These executions, broadcast on national television, have sent shockwaves through Congolese society, sparking a heated debate about the rule of law and the limits of justice. Adding to the growing number of arrests and convictions is Operation Ndobo, a large-scale police operation targeting Kuluna strongholds in Kinshasa and other cities. Hundreds of suspected gang members have been apprehended, often in sweeping raids that have drawn criticism from human rights groups. While some have been sentenced to prison terms, many others have been handed death sentences, further fueling the controversy surrounding the government's hardline approach. These actions, while presented as necessary measures to combat a growing threat, have raised serious concerns about due process and the right to a fair trial. Critics argue that the government, in its haste to deliver swift justice, is trampling on the rights of those accused, potentially leading to miscarriages of justice. The speed at which these trials are conducted, often lasting only a matter of hours, raises serious red flags about the ability of defendants to mount a proper defense. The government's crackdown on the Kulunas has been met with mixed reactions from the Congolese public. Many citizens, weary of living in fear and desperate for a return to stability, have expressed support for the government's tough stance. For them, the executions and mass arrests are seen as long overdue measures necessary to restore order to their communities. These sentiments are understandable, given the climate of fear that has gripped many urban areas. The Kulunas, with their brazen acts of violence and intimidation, have created an atmosphere of lawlessness, leaving many residents feeling vulnerable and unprotected. The government's decisive action, however controversial, is seen by some as a sign that the authorities are finally taking their concerns seriously. However, this apparent victory against lawlessness comes at a cost. The government's heavy-handed tactics have raised concerns about the erosion of civil liberties and the rule of law. There is a palpable fear that the crackdown on the Kulunas, while offering a sense of immediate security, could ultimately undermine the very fabric of Congolese democracy. The debate over the government's actions highlights a fundamental dilemma: the trade-off between security and freedom. While the desire for safety and stability is understandable, it should not come at the expense of fundamental human rights. The challenge for the Congolese government is to find a way to address the root causes of violence and crime, while upholding the principles of justice and due process. The international community and human rights organizations have voiced their concerns about the situation in Congo, particularly regarding the use of the death penalty and the fairness of trials. Amnesty International, among others, has condemned the executions, calling them a chilling escalation in the government's crackdown on crime. The organization argues that the death penalty is a violation of the right to life and is never the answer, regardless of the crime committed. Beyond the use of capital punishment, there are serious concerns about the legal proceedings themselves. Critics argue that the trials are often rushed and lack transparency, with defendants denied adequate legal representation and the opportunity to present a proper defense. The speed at which these trials are conducted, coupled with allegations of coerced confessions and intimidation of witnesses, raises serious doubts about their fairness. Human rights lawyers have documented numerous cases of irregularities in the trials of suspected Kulunas. These include allegations of arbitrary detention, denial of access to legal counsel, and the use of torture to extract confessions. The lack of due process and transparency in these cases not only violates the rights of the accused, but also undermines public trust in the justice system. The government's response to these criticisms has been muted at best. Officials maintain that the trials are conducted in accordance with Congolese law, and that the use of the death penalty is a necessary measure to deter future crime. However, these assurances ring hollow in the face of mounting evidence pointing to serious flaws in the judicial process. The phenomenon of the Kulunas is not new to Congolese society. These gangs, often composed of young men with limited economic opportunities, are a symptom of deeper societal issues plaguing the country. Decades of conflict, poverty, and government corruption have created a generation of disenfranchised youth, vulnerable to recruitment by criminal organizations. For many young people, joining a Kuluna gang offers a perverse sense of belonging, power, and economic opportunity that they feel is absent in mainstream society. The gangs provide a sense of community and identity, albeit one built on violence and intimidation. Addressing the root causes of this phenomenon, including poverty, lack of education, and limited job prospects, is crucial to breaking the cycle of violence. The government has announced plans to construct new prisons and improve conditions in existing facilities. While this is a step in the right direction, it is crucial that these reforms go hand in hand with broader efforts to address the social and economic factors that contribute to crime in the first place. This includes investing in education, job training, and social programs aimed at providing young people with viable alternatives to a life of crime. The situation in Congo highlights the complex challenges faced by post-conflict societies struggling to rebuild and reconcile. While the government's efforts to address the issue of the Kulunas are understandable, it is imperative that these measures are implemented within the framework of the rule of law and respect for human rights. Failing to do so risks exacerbating existing tensions and undermining long-term stability in the country.